and welcome to the Stream of Art podcast, where we chat openly about creativity, personal growth, and building a career in the arts. I am Michelle Manette.
And I'm Robyn Lester.
And this is episode 34, and today we will be talking about self-love. But first, as always, we will do our little check-in where we each share a win, a fun or interesting thing, and something we appreciate. Do you want to start us off?
Sure. A win for me. Okay, there's 2 wins. I'm going to sneak 2 wins in.
All right, I'll allow it.
Okay, thanks. I don't need your permission, though. You need my permission, but I don't need your permission. That's just the way this works.
You have complete authority. That's right.
Yeah. So one win. So last week I said my goal was to try to get 9 hours of sleep. It was between 8 to 9 hours every night, which was nice. So that was one win. And then the other win was that I finally looked into doing Toastmasters, which...
Nice.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what it's like, a public speaking thing. And there's I think there's some sort of program that you go through, or I don't know. I've just heard that it's good, and I haven't really looked into it beyond that in terms of what it actually entails. But I signed up to do some drop-in sessions with the club near me.
Awesome.
And I'm excited and nervous about that, but we'll see how that goes. And then the interesting thing is, and this kind of goes into an appreciation as well, I have been following this guy named Ben Fensum on Instagram, and he makes these really funny videos that he's basically acting out Pride and Prejudice, like the 1995 BBC version, but he's playing all the roles, and the voice, he dubs over the actual audio from the film. So he's just doing the facial expressions, and he's miming the words as through these different clips. And it's it's so funny and fascinating to watch, because it's the same dude playing every part, but he's so good at making himself seem like other characters just through his facial expressions alone, right? Because he's not doing anything with the voice, because he's not actually speaking. It's the audio from the movie. Anyways. And it's just really funny too, because he's very exaggerated. So I've been getting a kick out of watching them. And then that kind of circles into my appreciation post, which is just people doing and sharing funny things on the internet. How amazing is that? That's pretty cool.
I'm with you there. Yeah. Yeah, it's such a nice way to spread some joy just by just doing something funny.
And it's so, in his case, it's so random too. He doesn't have costumes. So for some of the costumes, he just has doilies on his head to kind of mimic the head things that women would wear back then. And then for the men, he'll put socks in his collar to mimic that neck scarf thing that those dudes would wear. And it's just it's so random, and it seems so kind of flung together, and it's delightful.
So creative.
Yeah. And I always just kind of how did you come up, how did you think of doing this?
It sounds like the kind of thing you'd come up with when you're in the shower, but when you get out of the shower, you're like, nah, it's a stupid idea. I'm not going to do it. But then they do it anyway.
Yeah, that's right. There's that level of, Anyways. Your turn.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you'll have to let me know how it goes with the Toastmasters, because that's been something I've thought about doing for years. I definitely want to work on my public speaking, and that's always the one I hear people do.
Yeah, I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, so my win is a pretty simple one, but I made myself a really nice dinner last night. I got a box of red lentil pasta.
I thought you were going to say... So I thought you were going to be like, I got a box of craft dinner.
No. Who do you think I am, Robyn? That's not a win.
That would have been so funny, though. That would have been a real good joke. So red lentil pasta, you said?
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's just one of those things. Pasta is one of those foods I've sort of come in and out of eating over the years. I've had the quinoa pasta, and I've tried all different kinds. And this is one I heard about. I follow a lot of vegan bodybuilders, And there were some who seemed to be talking about this a lot. This is something they're making. I'm like, oh, I didn't realize they had like a red lentil. And it's red lentil, and I think it's rice, brown rice.
Okay.
Anyway, so I picked up a box of that when I went shopping. And yeah, in the interest of continuing to build a better relationship with myself, one of the things I've been doing is taking the time to cook things. And so I'm trying to, cook things that I don't always take the time to do for myself. And that was one that I haven't had pasta in, probably a couple of years. And, so it didn't take overly long, but it still took long enough that at another point in my life, even a year ago, I would have been like, it's not worth it. It's not worth that time. But I'm like, you know what? I'm worth that time. So I added some green lentils to it, which makes it kind of Christmassy, except that green lentils, when they get cooked, are kind of brown. So didn't really look it. But I added garlic and onion and mushrooms and tomato. And it was really good. And some spices. Yeah, it was really simple, but it was really, really good and really filling. And it made a lot too. So I have enough now for, a few days probably. Because I'm not just having that. I also did up some broccoli and some Brussels sprouts, and I had some sauerkraut. So I want to get a nice, good variety. And which is something also different about how I've been cooking for myself, is I'm trying to go for more variety rather than just going with one thing, because it's easier.
Right.
So yeah, that felt like a win that has sort of been building up over the last 8-9 months, is I'm just cooking more, and that was something new. I'm just trying to do new things. I'm thinking about like getting into baking and stuff. So I don't know. This is a fun new territory for me. My fun/interesting thing is that I went to see Jordan Rakei in Montreal on Tuesday, and it was incredible. He's amazing.
I didn't know you were doing that, or did I know that? Was that spur of the moment?
No, I've had tickets. My dad and I got tickets probably months ago now. I probably just didn't mention it. I don't think I mentioned it when I talked to you last week. I totally forgot. Also, because now we're doing the intentions at the end rather than, what are we doing next week? Otherwise, I would have said that.
Oh, yeah. How was it?
Oh, it was so, so good. He had this artist I hadn't heard of before, Katie Tupper. She's from out west, and she's like a neo soul artist, and she opened for him, and she was really great. And then he came on, and he was amazing. His band was amazing. There's just like so much talent and skill and craft on display on that stage.
Yeah.
It's interesting because when I go to concerts, because they run so late, I am often finding myself sort of watching the clock a little bit. Like I do what John Mayer calls concert math. Like he talked about this at one of the concerts of his that I went to, where he's like, you'll be at a concert and you're sort of counting, okay, well, they did this many songs. So there's probably only about this many songs left, because as much as you're enjoying the concert, you also kind of want it to be done so you can just go home and go to sleep. I'm like, I so relate to that. But when it got to the end of the main set, just before the encore, I was really disappointed. I would have gladly sat there and just listened to, another hour. And they went for a good, with the encore and everything, it was at least an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So it was really, really, really good. And just exciting because that was my first time seeing him live. And so there's that moment of like, we're in the same room.
Oh, that's cool.
Like he's right there. This guy who's been, one of my biggest inspirations for the last, 6 years is just right there. And I had great seats too. And I brought my Kindle with me, which was amazing. So I didn't have to sit, because we got there early. The doors opened at 7, but the show didn't start until 8. So that was like an hour of sitting around, which normally it's just, you're just sitting there. I don't really like to, goof around on my phone. Yeah. So I usually just we'll sit there and, we'll chat a bit, but it's a lot of just kind of people watching and waiting. But having my Kindle there was amazing. Which I did that during a concert in the summer, but I brought a physical book with me.
Right.
But this was nice just because I had my jacket and it just slid right into my pocket. So I just had it tucked away. And then during the intermission I guess not really intermission, but between the opener and then Jordan, I got some more reading time in. I was like, this is great. Books are great. Everybody should bring books everywhere because it makes waiting way more engaging.
I did that as a gag at a bar once. I had an art history book in my purse, and I was on the dance floor, and I pulled out my art history book and started reading it.
On the dance floor?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a choice. I'm like, okay, reading at a bar, is that me? But okay, if you're, if you're out on the dance floor and then trying to like, were you studying or it was just a...
Oh no, I just like before I left the house, I'm like, I know it would be funny. It was quite a joke to commit to. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
There you go. You can do that again, put a video up, and now you can be a comedy Instagrammer.
Yeah, genius.
Well. And then that extends into also the thing I appreciate, which is just Jordan Rakei, his incredible skill and music making and the just incredible band he surrounded himself with, and my appreciation for live music and music in general. It was just, I felt very full emotionally at the end of that. It was really nice, a really nice time.
Nice.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, main topic, self-love.
Blech.
So you might feel differently by the end. Because I sort of felt that way too about, the idea of self-love. But I was reading a book by Matthew Hussey called Love Life. And he has this one chapter talking about core confidence. And he ends up going into the idea of self-love. And it was just really interesting and really aligned with where I've ended up as far as my thought process about, building a relationship with myself and how I show up for myself and all of that. So it just immediately I thought, oh, this would be a great one to have a conversation about, because I'm wondering if you and I are maybe a bit on the same page as far as how we feel, or in my case, felt about like the idea of self-love, because that's one of those things. And he talks about this in his book, so ubiquitous in most spaces, the idea of you have to love yourself first. Like you have to, you need self-love. If you want anything else, you need self-love first. And it's like, it's a nice idea. That's part of what I struggled with as far as the idea of self-love is it makes sense. Like, of course, hating yourself is not a good thing. It's, of course, you can't find, it's difficult to find love in any other form if you can't give it to yourself first. But what on earth does that look like? Is this tied to self-care? Is that self-love? Is it the idea of lighting candles and getting in the bath and, turning off your phone? And so it just, to me, it felt like too nebulous of an idea. And I don't do well with those kinds of things. I like thinking about things, but unless I can actually apply it to my life, it tends to just be this idea. And when people are beating you over the head with it, it just gets a little bit annoying. But I'm interested to hear how you feel at this point, pre-talking about some of his ideas around self-love.
It's not something I've thought about much until this topic came up. I don't like the term. Like, I think it's similar to the sort of self-help industry's focus on happiness and the pursuit of happiness. I feel the same way. Like, I think self-love, that concept, first of all, that term immediately alienates a lot of people, because I think there's a lot of people who just like the idea of loving themselves. It's too hard of a destination to get to, because there's too many barriers for whatever reason, right? Like, yeah, there's trauma and baggage that it just makes it way too challenging to even think about loving yourself in that way. I think the more productive term and the thing that resonates more with me is not so much self-love, because it's like there's going to be times where I don't really love myself or don't really like where I'm at. And it's more self-acceptance. I think that's what resonates with me more. And I think that is actually the greatest act of self-love that you can give yourself, is just self-acceptance and accepting that there's going to be times in your life where you might not like really who you are or what you're doing or the path you're on, and that's okay. You got to do something about it, obviously, but if you choose to anyways. But to just like love and acceptance are two different things in my mind. Well, maybe they're not though. Maybe they're not. Maybe love doesn't exist in my mind.
Love is dead. You heard it here first, folks.
I don't know what I'm trying to say. And I'm realizing
I get where you're coming from.
Again, it's all just words, right? Like I'm just arguing about definitions of words. But I think, for me personally, the concept of self-love is not something that resonates with me. Self-acceptance feels much more easier to wrap my head around, and I know what to do with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I just sort of have a reaction against anything that is too positive.
Mm.
The pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of self-love, like that it's too positive. And it's just, I feel like I'm very reactive to toxic positivity because I think it's extremely damaging.
Yes.
And having been around people who exhibit the kind of like toxic positivity and how diminishing it feels and not demoralizing, but it really serves to invalidate like my human experience. And so, anything that skews too positive and too wishy-washy, I'm immediately like, red flags start going up for me.
Yeah, it feels dismissive.
Yeah. And it just also, I just think love, again, just it's the term. Love is just it's too loaded. Like that concept,
it has too much baggage
in and of itself is way too loaded.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those words that needs some retooling. And this is something that Matthew Hussey talks about in this chapter. He says that self-love really needs a rebrand. And love in general, I mean, that's the whole idea of the book is he really puts a lot of these ideas about love on their head. But yeah, I'm with you 100%. And yeah, I think that was definitely one of the things I struggled with is it feels so big. Like, how do you achieve that? Just love yourself? Like, it feels so big. It feels so unattainable. And this is something that, he talks about where if you're failing at it, it just makes you feel worse. Like we're people often struggling just to like ourselves. Yeah. And then when we fail to love ourselves, we feel like we're failures, and other people maybe seem to be doing it so easily, which, we know that that's probably not the case, that everybody's got stuff they're dealing with and stuff below the surface. But, it's too much pressure.
It's unrealistic. Like there's there's things of me, like an example, right, is like of my weight, right? And I think I can get to a point of accepting, but am I ever going to love my body as it is? I don't know, because there's so much conditioning that I have experienced that tells me that my body is wrong. And I don't know if I will ever be able to that. I mean, the work involved in doing that, first of all, to get to a point where I will love my body. It's so much work. And I don't know if I have the energy for it. But acceptance can be a comfortable place, right? I think this is it. Like, you don't have to be at a place of loving everything about yourself to feel comfortable. I think you could also just be in a place of acceptance, and that is good enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I had made a note on that I thought of was, I feel like I prefer the idea of self-love as being an umbrella for a bunch of other things. So it's not like self-love is its own separate thing, so much as it houses all these other things. So self-acceptance would fall under that category.
So it's like more
self-respect, self-compassion, self-care. So it is sort of the embodiment of how you show up for yourself in general. And acceptance is going to be one of the foundational building blocks of having self-love. So, and this is something he taps into, which really resonated with me, because he talks about this as far as romantic relationships go, where he's like, don't think about love as a feeling, like it's a verb, it's an action, it's the work. Right. Don't just think about how you feel about somebody or how they may or may not feel about you. How are they showing up in the relationship? And then how are you showing up? Are you on equal footing in terms of what you're putting in, the energy you're putting in? And so that immediately resonated with me, because I'm very much about the action. How am I actually showing up for myself in my life? This is this ongoing question I've had over, again, the last like 8 or 9 months since March, when I started the Artist Way. And it got me really looking deep at my relationship with myself. And I realized in how many ways I was not treating myself very well in terms of how I was thinking about myself and speaking to myself and then acting. And so it's really been pivotal in my journey to address how I'm showing up for myself. So that's sort of where I was thinking about, just focusing on the action. But he also had some really good perspectives that I thought were interesting. He was talking about using different models, because if we try to use the model of romantic love to then map onto our experience of self-love, it ends up again being this idea of the feeling, like the idea of like falling in love with somebody is easy, and it's this desire that sort of pulls you towards somebody, and then as the intimacy increases, the desire decreases, and then that's when you get to the point where then you can question whether this is the right relationship. That's when often people start going like, the grass is greener kind of thing. They start looking for other people who they don't know as well. It's and this is something he had referenced. Esther Perel, who is, if I'm not mistaken, a relationship expert. I'll have a bunch of quotes. I have a whole bunch of quotes I took that were really great. I'm going to put those in the show notes. I'm not going to read them all out, but I'll have a bunch down there for anybody interested in checking out some specific quotes from the book. But yeah, he was talking about then, if familiarity breeds contempt, then what other emotion is there room for? He was talking about with ourselves, because we are always here. If the idea that you get to know somebody more and more and more makes you like them less, then what does that mean for us when we are with ourselves all the time? And so it's really not a great model to try to aspire to as far as how we love ourselves. So it's about being proactive, taking care of, investing, encouraging. So again, the idea of self-love being a verb. But he also talks about looking at a different model of love, which is the one that a parent has for a child. And not all parents, of course, there are certainly parents who do not love their children, but for the ones who do, he talked about asking how he's asked parents before, why do you love your kid? And they're like, well, because they're mine. It's my kid. And then they look like that's the stupidest question in the world. Like, of course, it's just they're mine. And so that's the model he's sort of thinking about in terms of shifting how we think about that feeling of love for ourselves. It's this unconditional thing, because the idea is that you love somebody even if they disappoint you, even if you maybe don't always like them, maybe they're behaving in a way that you don't agree with or is harmful or whatever, but there's still the love there. And he was talking about, if you have a kid with a stuffed rabbit, don't try to tell him that you have one that's like more expensive or better or whatever. It's like, no, it's like that kid loves that rabbit because it's his. It's just for the simple fact that he's given it meaning by saying this is mine. And he used the example too of a somebody with a pet. If you see somebody walking like the worst looking dog, we've all seen the dogs out there with who are with teeth falling out and their tongue is sticking out and they have like barely any fur left. And if you tried to offer a trade for something for like a newer model of dog, like they'd never do it. Like I think about that with my dog as she got old, and I'm like, I wouldn't have traded her for anything. You would not be able to make me give up my dog for anything because she was mine. And so it's that level of love. And that is really an interesting idea to me. So this is from him. That's because the fundamental reason behind the love in all of these relationships is the same. I love them because they're mine. And this realization turned loving myself with all my flaws and shames, my regret and my self-resentment, all the fluff that's coming out of every seam, from an impossible ideal into something I knew exactly how to do. Yeah, so that shift is really interesting to me. I'm curious to hear what you think about that.
I don't know. Yeah, it's interesting. Why do we love things? I guess I haven't really thought of, I didn't really think that there were different, like, I don't know what I'm thinking.
I think it's that idea of unconditional love. So it's the difference between a deep-rooted core kind of love and the superficial love that gets thrown around in, wellness spaces when they talk about self-love. And it feels like this fluffy thing that you can't grasp onto. It's like when you see a picture that's been so heavily airbrushed and you're like, that's not real. That's, it's this thing that doesn't feel real. But when you get to the core of that kind of love, maybe you could even call it capital L love, that feels like this unshakable foundation that's just there. And he has this other quote that I really enjoyed. Imagine someone asking you why you love yourself and you shaking your head just like the parent who says, because that's my kid. It has nothing to do with how great you are. No traits, attributes, or achievements are necessary. Because I'm my person, you say, as if it were completely obvious. Because when you think about it, it is. So this idea that you are your person, like each of us has been assigned the responsibility of caring for just one person. And for so many of us, there's this pressure to care for other people, women especially, right? It's like that you are the caregiver. You are taking care of your kids or your elderly parents or the community or whatever, whatever string of people you feel responsible for. But ultimately, all of us only have ourselves. Like we are our own responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
And he explains when we are young, like when we're kids, we can't take care of ourselves. We have somebody who has to do that for us. Whether they do adequately or not is another subject, but we depend on our parents or our guardians to take care of us and to make sure we survive. And then once we get to a point where we can survive on our own and take care of ourselves, a lot of us go looking for that in other places. So we look for it in relationships, in parental figures, in mentors, in friends, in whatever. So it's that looking outside of ourselves for the thing that really only we can give ourselves. And this ties in with what he calls that core confidence, which is something that's unshakable. It's not dependent on, the sort of like identity confidence that you get from, like in my case, that I get from being a musician, being somebody who's, into fitness, being somebody who likes to read, like all these things that sort of build up my identity and makes me feel like me, and it makes me feel like I have a place in the world. Some of that can be taken away, and actually most of it could be taken away at any point. So it's developing that actual deep-rooted confidence that doesn't rely on your achievements and your status and whatever else, whatever other measure people are using to justify their value.
Yeah. I have very little to add. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just interesting, like, because part of me wonders if we were all able to kind of tap into that core whatever, would anything get done?
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like,
absolutely
if we were all, because like, if we all felt this sort of sense of core, like we were all able to feel that core confidence, like, would that mean we'd stop trying to find value elsewhere?
I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think it would be the foundation we need to go after those things in a way that's actually healthy.
And
here he says, loving ourselves is more than a feeling, it's an approach. It's doing hard things for yourself and showing up for yourself out of a sense of duty and responsibility. We have to stop looking for self-love's short-term rewards. Core confidence is a long-term investment. And that definitely resonates with me. As far as anything in my life that I love, I invest in. I've invested years into music and into health and into study, and that's what it means to show that. It's just pretty empty to just say, oh, I love this thing, or I love these things, or this is important to me. It's about knowing that there's then a duty or a responsibility to actually show up and do those things, to show up, in this case, for yourself. And like you said, to do hard things. So that really is what it comes down to, is doing the work for yourself. So having that layer of, if not love, at the very least recognition that you do have a responsibility to yourself. And I always love the word duty, because that feels like to me, like I feel that sense with music, with how I want to show up in the world. I feel like I do it because that's why I'm here. And so I take care of myself because I am my person. And that is going to change then. And I know, because this has been my experience over the last, 8 or 9 months. I am showing up differently for all of those other things because I'm now showing up differently for myself.
Right.
And it actually helps me to do a better job with everything that I'm doing because I have a much stronger foundation. The one I had before was, crumbling, and floorboards were all splintering, and, it was pretty bad. And, I was trying to build all of that other stuff on top of that, and it's just not possible. And then he talks about, really encouraging people to think about themselves as a person. This is something he asks, like, how many of us actually think of ourselves as people in the world? It's because we're seeing the world through our own eyes and our own experience. It can be easy. It makes it much easier to dehumanize ourselves. Whereas other people, we see them moving through the world. And so they feel more like people to us. Not that we can't dehumanize other people, because obviously we do. But we tend to feel more of a responsibility for, like I mentioned earlier, taking care of other people. How are we treating other people? And we're not asking that of how we treat ourselves. And, we really need to be changing how we're speaking to ourselves if we are, one of the billions of people who will berate ourselves when we stumble or we mess up. And, think about how many times have you woken up in the middle of the night and thought about something you said or something you did, and you just feel horrible, and then you talk down to yourself. Like I've done that. I spent years doing that. And we do this unconsciously, is what he says. So it might be forgivable if we were horrible to everybody. At least that would be consistent. But to purport to care about people, then to systematically exclude ourselves from that same consideration, that is cruel. But like most cruelty, it takes place away from the public eye, where no one's around to offer us any mercy or speak up on our behalf. And then he has this quote from Jack Kornfield: "If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete." Which makes me think, actually, that that's really important. It's a question of, how do you treat yourself when nobody's looking? Because it's very easy in this day and age, or it would be easy for somebody to engage in a quote unquote act of self-love that is very performative, that they then put up online and then be like, self-love. And again, that's so confusing, because people are seeing, again, somebody, I don't know, again, candles in a bubble bath. That's a nice thing to do for yourself. But if that's your only definition, it's so hollow. There's a difference.
Well, and that's a self-care versus a self-love. Yes. Like, it's a different thing.
And maybe that's part of the problem, is that it's not something as obvious to describe or to show. And so it maybe gets confused with some other things. Yeah, because
it's not well defined, I don't think. Like, the concept isn't well defined.
Definitely not. And it's all internal. It's how you treat yourself, how you talk to yourself, how you think about yourself. And so maybe the best examples of self-love are the people who move through the world, and maybe there's kind of an ease with which they move through the world. There's not a sense of trying to prove themselves, or there's just this kind of quiet confidence. And maybe that's what self-love looks like.
Yeah, I would kind of argue that is the case. Like, people who are online trying to tell everyone else how to do it, like, I think there's not that they're creating content that is necessarily harmful, or not that they're bad people, but I think that they're trying to prove something. They're trying to assert their value externally, right? Like, they're through external channels. Yeah. And I think anyone who exists on social media is trying to do that.
Yeah.
Because I think it's kind of impossible to exist on social media and not be doing that. Like, that's what social media is. It's a way of using an external channel to prove your value as a human. And I don't think that's particularly healthy.
No, not at all.
And the other thing, just circling back to what you were saying about, waking up and thinking about that stupid thing you said 25 years ago. I mean, I've had that. And I think another way to kind of think about this is, there have been things that I've been in the room and I've heard people say insensitive things or silly things or whatever. And most of the time, unless it was directed to me and was intentionally meant to be hurtful, most of the times it's like, oh, that was kind of like, that was a weird thing to say, and you don't think anything of it, right? Because your expectations of other people aren't as high as the expectations we hold for ourselves. And I think that might be a trick to achieving that kind of, I don't know if it's confidence or just calm, but just lowering your expectations for yourself. And that means a departure from this concept of perfection. I think that plays a big part in it too. Again, like I think a lot of this stuff is abandoning all of this. There's so much like in the world of self-improvement. I think there's so many concepts that are preventing us from getting to that place of calm. We have to, it makes work out of everything. And it's just kind of tiring, like there's the search for happiness, but then there's the search for self-love. And then with that, it means overcoming a sense of perfection. Well, that's a job too. And it's just like, it's a job on top of a job on top of a job to get to this place of idealness. And I just wonder, like, if we all just stop trying, can we all just stop trying to, like, I think we think ourselves into an existence that is just wrought with anxiety and stress and all of those things. Like, how do we stop that process?
Yeah, I don't have an answer for you. I'm working on that myself.
I don't know if anything I just said made any sense because I just went on a weird tangent, but we're so hard on ourselves.
Yeah. Okay. So you talked about expectations. That ties into what we talked about last week with acceptance and managing expectations. And I think that is absolutely crucial. Just changing the expectations we have for ourselves to be ones that are, first of all, more reflective of reality, which is that we are flawed human beings and we're going to make mistakes. And also to something that's kinder, to have expectations about ourselves and about our ability to perform and be in the world that demonstrates some compassion for ourselves. Knowing, again, not having an expectation that we can go and be perfect, expecting that we're going to make mistakes, and then having a safe place to land. To be like, I'm not going to beat myself up over it. If you have to feel bad or feel guilty about something, or if you hurt somebody, like there's definitely work to be done if you've done something that requires, making amends. But if you keep living in that place of telling yourself you're a bad person or you're a failure or whatever, I mean, you're just depriving yourself of the experience of the now, of enjoying life now. Like, it's done. Like, once you've done something, you've done something. And again, beyond just doing what you have to do to repair any damage you've done and accepting accountability and all of that, you have to learn how to let it go. So yeah, I get where you're coming from as far as the idea of just not trying. That doesn't resonate with me. And maybe that's a personality thing. I'm always wary of anybody who says, you don't have to do anything, just because I know what it takes to get better. But I'm definitely trying to find a place where I'm not feeling like I have to fix myself. Like, yeah, I'm constantly this work in progress, but it's not, this is where I just recently came to, I was actually journaling about this last night, where right now I'm feeling like what I'm doing isn't becoming a better version of me. I'm becoming a fuller version of me. And what that means is I am really working on embracing all aspects of myself. Because for a long time, I had deemed certain qualities that I have as being admirable and being ones that I wanted to elevate, and others being reprehensible. Like, I had to shove them down, deep down, like all that. I don't like any of that. I don't like the fact that I am somebody who likes to, play video games and, sleep in and do all of that. And I'm the person who gets up early and works hard and discipline. And, I've come to the point where I'm accepting that both those things are true. Again, trying to hold in my mind the understanding that more than one thing can be true at the same time. I can be somebody who likes to get up early and work really hard, and also somebody who loves to just lay in bed and read and then have a very slow, leisurely day where I play games and just like go for the dopamine hits. Both those things are true. And so how can I allow both of those things to exist in harmony?
Yeah.
And I'm feeling that within myself. I feel like I've stop trying to make myself smaller and try to cut away all the stuff I don't like. I'm trying to actually build myself up and make myself feel bigger, like I have room to just be who I am, but in a way that aligns with the things that do matter to me. So it's always about just checking in with myself and seeing where I'm at and trying to find a way that's to accept all the sides of myself that aren't self-destructive. Because there is certainly a shade of the very disciplined and work-oriented part of myself that can and has become very self-destructive. And then there's the part of me that likes to just disengage and give my brain a rest and all of that. That can also become self-destructive if I let it get out of control. So it's about trying to find, again, balance is not the right word. Balance is a word I used for years, but it doesn't quite feel right. I think it's about harmony and recognizing that when it comes to harmony, some aspects of me are going to be more prevalent at some points than the other and vice versa. So that's just sort of where I'm getting, but it's like, I'm understanding too, again, managing expectations. I know I'm always going to be doing work on myself, but it's about uncovering the parts of myself that have been buried away and healing the parts of myself that need to be healed. And that's good. It's hard work, but it's good work. And I'm starting to now experience the benefits of all of that kind of work that I've been doing.
Yeah, and I wasn't saying like let's just stop and maybe where I'm at is because I'm still doing, like I'm in therapy, I'm still trying to work on things, but my focus is less now on like the future me. What I'm trying to focus in and narrow in on is the day-to-day me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think a lot of the stuff we come across in that sort of self-improvement area it's still very future focused. And it's all still focused on reaching an ideal point. And that's what I'm rejecting fully because there is no ideal point. And I have done myself psychological harm by believing that there is this ideal version of me that exists that I will get to if I do the right things and read the right books and absorb the right information. And I fully reject that now.
Yeah.
And I think for me, the idea of I'm hesitant to even say I'm trying to improve because even there's an emphasis on the future, right? Trying to improve to get somewhere, and it's, I'm trying to just in the moment, like assess and maybe not necessarily in the day or in the moment, but like in the short term, like what is it that I need to give myself and then give myself that thing. It's not for a reason. It's not necessarily for a purpose. It's not something that it's not part of a bigger plan to get myself somewhere else. It's just that I have identified that for whatever reason in the short term, this is this thing that I feel like pursuing, or this is the thing that I feel like trying. And I'm going to honor that. It's still like, there's still that element of caring for yourself. It's just that for me, the timeline, I'm not looking as far ahead. And there'll be lots of people who say that that's wrong. And that means I'm not going to get anywhere in life. And that, you need to plan, you need to map out, you need to blah, 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 blah. And I don't care because I've just realized that it's just not who I am. Like, it's not how I function. There's certain things that I will in life, there's certain things you do kind of have to think longer term on, and I will. But in terms of myself and who I am as a person and that kind of self-work, I think I've just found a comfortable place where I'm just here, kind of.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to just be here and not overthink too much.
Yeah. So I think the bigger issue is over-planning, overthinking. It's about finding the right amount of planning for what you want to do. Because, as you said, there is a certain degree of planning that is required. But if you're planning right down, and I think this...
Well, like for like job stuff, right? Like for some things, like if you want to buy a house, okay, well, you got to do some financial planning. If you want to like do a trip, or if you want to switch careers, or like there's certain things in life where it's like, you're going to have to come up with some sort of plan here.
Yeah.
I guess this is where I feel kind of sad for us as a human species, because I think this sort of self-work or evolution, or whatever you want to call it, growth, acceptance, whatever term you want to use, I just feel like we've made it into work where it doesn't necessarily need to be that. Like we have enough areas in our life that feel like work and require that level of planning and all of that stuff. Like, and I think that's what I meant by like, can we just stop trying? Like, can we just stop making this work? Just live.
Yeah.
Just be. And it seems kind of tragic in a way that we can't just let ourselves be, that we can't give ourselves the grace to just be who we are in this moment. We have to think so much about it, about who we are and why are we this way, and like how do we be different and how do we get there, and it's just exhausting.
Yeah, it sounds like what you're asking for is stillness.
Yeah, well, what I'm asking for is essentially somewhere I can go that's just away from
from people.
From people trying to fix
I've
spent a lot of time on LinkedIn recently, and I don't think that's very helpful because it's like, oh my gosh, this is exhausting.
You know, it's interesting because I've spent barely any time on LinkedIn, maybe a combined total of maybe 15 minutes in my entire life that I've been on LinkedIn. And so it's interesting to me to hear, because you're not the first person I've heard say that LinkedIn is actually pretty bad. It's pretty toxic.
Well, it's just like talking about, and I think this is why I'm reacting so much to like us making our life about work. Because I'll see posts where it's like, I was out with my children the other day getting ice cream, and it reminded me of these 4 principles of marketing. And it's like and it's like, really, you were having a moment with your children, and then like you've like somehow shaped that into this self-promotional post about your skill set. It just makes me it's so tragic.
I'm laughing because I feel like that's what I'd be doing if I had kids, because kids are kind of boring. It's bad enough. Like when I go to play with the cat, I always make sure I have like a podcast. I'm trying to be better about this to be more present with her, but I'll have music or a podcast because I'm like, I'm sorry, cat, you're so boring. And she's just like playing with this toy, trying to entertain her. So I kind of half jokingly, half seriously, I kind of get that. I feel like if I was playing with boring children as well.
Yeah, it's just this weird. It's this weird thing of like leveraging your own life.
Yeah.
To use it as some sort of promotional tool but specific to your like work expertise. Like it's a very strange, and like for me, I'm very much, I have my work life and I have my personal life. Like the two don't mix, right? Like I keep my hours. I don't like those worlds blending, and then there's all sorts of other stuff on LinkedIn. And I mean, I won't get into like the comment section now is getting more like the comment section you'd see on Facebook. Like just, yeah. So it's like any social media platform. It can be pretty toxic. Yeah. And then there's areas that can be lovely to see. But that's kind of sidebar conversation. But anyways.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I get that. Yeah. And I think the idea of planning being sort of a reflection of your personality is probably maybe one of the keys here, because for me, I really enjoy I enjoy the experience of planning, although we've talked about this too, because you can spend so much time planning and then that can get in the way of actually just doing the thing.
And that's my experience with it. And which is why it's like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm definitely at a point where I'm wanting to find the balance where I'm not planning for the sake of planning, that planning is always in support of what it is I want to do. And for me, like trying to find harmony with the part of me that is very ambitious and wants to do a lot of things, and also the part of me that is just wanting, I think like what you were saying, wanting to just be a bit more day to day in the present. What am I doing today? So that I'm not living for the future, living for this ideal self or this ideal life that's never going to happen, recognizing that my life is now.
Yeah.
And that I have to live it now. I'm not, this is not a trial run where then you hit a point and then your life begins. Like it's already started. So you might as well live it now. And I think those things can be in harmony. I think it just takes time. It takes a lot of unlearning as well. And perhaps a lot of distancing yourself from how other people are doing things. And if you are spending time on any kind of social media platform, you're going to see people doing things a certain way. And I think it's pretty inevitable for a lot of us that we then question the validity of how we're doing it. So if we see somebody doing it, well, they're doing it this way, maybe I should be doing it this way. Maybe how I'm living or how I'm moving through the world isn't correct. That's where it becomes a really big problem, and where having that time to yourself where you can just be, it lets you listen to that inner wisdom or inner knowing that will help guide you on your journey.
And then throw into the mix the fact that we're all searching to be valued and validated for our existence. And of course, when you are online, you see others doing things and they're getting the praise and the recognition. Mm-hmm. And it's like, we all want that. We all want recognition. We all want to be heard.
Yeah.
We look at how other people are accomplishing that, and then we try to mimic, right? Because that's the quickest path, I guess. I don't know. Yeah, I think I'm just in a place where I'm kind of burnt on like I'm gonna do what I'm doing. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing, but I'm a little bit tired of thinking too much about it, I guess.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I feel like I've spent so much of my life doing that, and it hasn't really gotten me very far.
Yeah, I'm with you there. I think we talked about this last week when it comes to checking in with your body versus constantly always deferring to your mind.
Yeah.
Because it's the idea that you are not your thoughts, but our thoughts are constantly the thing that we tend to prioritize, give our thoughts about things and our thinking more weight than maybe they should be given.
So, I mean, going back to this whole self-love thing then, if self-love is essentially developing this core confidence, what do we do to do that, Michelle? What do we do to do that?
Oh, Robyn. I think
a wise one.
So I can tell you how I'm doing that for myself. Part of my journey has been the journaling, because it's really forced me to face myself and like how I actually am too. And it's an interesting struggle. And I'm curious to know for anybody who's done journaling, if this is something they've experienced too, where I find myself almost censoring myself as I'm writing as if somebody else is maybe one day going to read this journal.
Oh, yeah,
I just to make it clear that once I die, I want these burned. I don't want anybody to read them.
I can't wait to read them.
They need to be they need to be destroyed. But I feel myself, even though knowing I am hopefully going to be the only person who ever reads my journals, I find myself censoring my thoughts and my words. And
isn't that sad?
And it's so interesting, because I'm really actively working to get through that, to just like say what I'm thinking, just to write out what I'm thinking, so that I can really know myself. So it's like that's one of the steps for me is doing things so that I can actually know myself, rather than just again continuing to tell myself who I think I should be. Like, who am I actually? What's actually going on?
That's really fascinating, because it's like I've had that experience too, and same thing where it's like, no one else is going to read this, but realizing now it wasn't a fear of other people reading it. It was a fear of me reading it. Mm-hmm. It was a fear of being honest with myself.
Yeah. And it's hard. It's a part of my journaling practice is I go back and I read my old entries, because you're looking for patterns. You're looking for anything to better understand yourself. And it's hard. It is really hard, but it's starting to pay off. So that's something that I started that independently of this sort of thing. This has been something I've been doing for the last almost 3 years now. But I'm finding that because I have that practice in place, it's giving me an opportunity to explore some of these deeper questions about myself. And that's been really, really helpful, because there was a time in my life where I would have done anything to avoid facing those parts of myself that I, again, deemed unworthy. Or
what I like about this journaling practice is it combines, first of all, in the moment, because you're having to be mindful and consider where you are right now as you're writing. And when you reread, you're going back in the past. Mm-hmm. So I like that, because it's not so much future focused, it's more reflection focused, and then comparing that to where you are now, which feels healthier to me than constantly
Yeah.
holding yourself in the present to what you could be in the future.
Yeah, feeling lesser than now because you aren't where you should be, or you aren't that ideal, actually unattainable version of yourself. Yeah, it's like mining the past for information about who you are. Because often we tend to have like the same patterns cropping up, even as we're changing. And that's something too, like the idea of the way I'm thinking about my personal growth and development is that it's not, it's something that I'm actively participating in, but not so much deliberately anymore. I'm not trying to be better. I don't think I'm going to word this very well because this is kind of still a new way of thinking for me, but I'm recognizing that I'm just inevitably from living life, I'm going to keep growing and changing and evolving. But I think I'm trying to control the direction I go less.
Yeah.
I'm letting myself unfold as a person according to who I am as a person. And inevitably that means I'm going to be getting better. I'm a much happier person. I know you hate the word happiness or happy, but I feel like more content. Yeah, I feel more at ease, at peace. I feel more content. I'm much more compassionate and kind. And I don't feel the same kind of frenetic energy I used to where I was just constantly like, go, go, go. I feel this much more steady kind of pace to my day to day, even as I'm moving things forward, because there are things that I want to do. So, you know, it's finding for me the right balance of going for the things that I want, that I know I have to prepare for, but not making that feel like not letting that make me feel like I'm lesser now. Like it's just, I'm going to get there in the time it takes. Right. And that's one big thing for me is I've eliminated my expectations for when things are going to happen or when I'm going to get things done. I'm just doing them. I just keep going. Every day I'm showing up and I'm doing something and enjoying it in that day. I'm trying to enjoy the day as a whole with whatever I'm doing. If I'm working on music, if I'm writing something, I'm reading something, if I'm just playing a game, if I'm just sitting and petting my cat, like whatever I'm doing, I'm trying to really enjoy that, knowing that it's going to get me wherever I need to go, but that I'm not going to necessarily be able to plan for exactly where that is, because you also want to let life surprise you. Like there's certain things too that I never would have expected to have happen in my life, and so it's like constantly just trying to build up my foundation. So I know what I need to be working on, musically speaking, and you know, as a person, just again trying to just be the fullest, you know, version of myself, whatever that looks like in any given moment. And let that be the foundation for the other stuff, so that I'm no longer trying to micromanage the details of my life and like the specifics of how I think things should happen. It's more just letting things unfold a little bit more naturally. Just again, thinking about what's in my control and what's not, which most things aren't. And there's so much you can't plan for. So, you know, it's more about, for me, having the right perspective. So a lot of that's, again, that internal work. The Stoicism helps a lot with that, because it means I can face things as they come rather than, you know, worrying about things that happen or won't happen or whatever. I feel like I'm much more, I've built up that inner citadel so that I'm capable of handling whatever life happens to throw my way. And then by nature of just living life and facing those experiences, I'm just going to continue to grow and change and better understand myself, and then be able to show up in the world like more of myself. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that makes sense. Again, this is all like very new territory for me, but
well, and a lot of that resonates with me to an extent as well. Like that, letting things kind of unfold as they will and not trying to orchestrate things too much, because I have tried and failed to do that, where failed mainly in that I didn't try very hard. But the reason I didn't try very hard is because like that sort of level of control isn't something that I actually enjoy having, I think.
It's too much responsibility when it's,
and what you said, like you want life to still surprise you. That really resonates with me. And I've kind of been thinking about that over the past couple of days. Just like, I try a lot of weird things. And like, I'll pick up hobbies for a short period of time, and some hobbies last, you know, longer, but I really enjoy that. Like, I like that I can look back on my life and like, there's all sorts of there's all sorts of things that I've done and experienced that no one would ever know because it will never make it onto my resume, and it never was a big enough part of my life to be something I would share with people. But I've collected I've collected these things, these experiences, and I really like that. And none of those came out of planning. You know, like they just kind of happened. And I think I'm okay. I'm okay not to have that control over my life that I think some other people really like to have.
Yeah.
And also, I guess it's fair to say, like, if you like to have that, like, that's fine too, I guess. But as long as you're not sacrificing your own wellness in the process.
Yeah.
And I think that can be tricky. I think people try to orchestrate and control because they feel like that's what they should do.
Yeah, I think so. I think for a lot of people too, it's a defense mechanism because life feels so uncertain. So they create this illusion of control by like trying to micromanage, and yeah, it just ends up giving you, anxiety, and people are constantly stressed. It's a difficult thing, and actually, I feel like that's a fairly common theme I've been hearing in a lot of the podcasts I listen to, I guess, especially with women, learning how to feel like they can let go, like they can stop trying to make sure everything is okay in the family, like to be able to just trust that people are going to be okay and that things will be fine. They'll figure it out, and not trying to be like constantly on. Because that's it stresses out your body and your nervous system when you're constantly on. You're hyper vigilant and trying to control everything. If you feel like, and it's also it's a little bit it's a little arrogant too to think we have that much control, that we are the ones responsible for like shaping everything, and it's actually not. It's not the case. We're on a planet with a bunch of other people. Stuff happens, stuff we don't plan for, and so if you let yourself off the hook, it just gives you all of this freedom, and it gives you a chance also to tap into your intuition, which it sounds like you do a lot and you do really well, where you just do things because you feel like you want to do them. There's no ulterior motive. It's just, I want to do this thing. I want to try this thing. And you have no expectations about it being something that you then capitalize on in some way, shape, or form later. It's just for the experience of doing it.
I used to have expectations, and that's where I got myself into trouble. Because what my life looked like for a long time, and it wasn't until very recently where it stopped looking like that, was a bunch of things that I started and tried and never committed to. That's what it looked like. And that's because I was kind of embedded in that sort of like in a mindset that was sort of like future focused and prioritizing productivity. And now I recognize it for what it is, which is like, I was just trying things. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we should be able to try things without any expectations, and without putting pressure on ourselves to do it really well or to be great or to not fail. I mean, that holds so many people back, but it's part of the process of learning something new. And I think it's great to be a beginner again. Yeah.
And I think self-love or core confidence, whatever, I really don't like the term self-love, whatever, but I think one nice way to get there too is to recognize, like, how do you work as a human? And I think a good way of figuring that out is looking at, like, how did you operate as a kid? Because for me as a kid, I was the same way. I would pick up and drop interests like crazy. I'd get really, really fascinated by something for a short period of time, and then I'd kind of move on, right? And that continued, that pattern kind of continued. And I think we need to kind of honor just our natural way of being.
Yeah. Yeah, it's that acceptance, not trying to make yourself somebody you're not. Yeah, that's been a big one for me too. This past year, just not trying to make myself into this version of me I'm not, simply because I thought it would gain me approval or acknowledgement or value or whatever. Yeah, that's been a big part of it is I've spent a lot of my life chasing value in very unhelpful and unhealthy and in some cases self-destructive ways. So yeah, I think you're right. I think it's about all of us getting to know ourselves and then accepting ourselves, and then operating from the place of knowing who we are. I think so few people actually know who they are, because it's so easy to either be distracted or to look to other people for instruction on how we should be, rather than trusting that inner knowing, that inner truth of who each of us actually is.
Yeah, and it's a hard thing. I think you have to be in a safe space too to be able to get to know yourself in some cases too, right? And not everyone has that luxury.
That's very true.
And we're social beings that have been designed to conform so that we can, I mean, like when you're talking ancient man, like if you didn't conform to the group, you were an outcast, and that meant death, quite literally.
Yeah.
So there's that element as well. Yeah. So this kind of idea of tapping into our core being and who we are and all that, like very, very modern.
That's very true.
So it's not surprising that we're not all rocking it, you know?
Yeah, of course. And maybe that's the work that needs to be done, is letting go. Well, first of all, having that understanding of why we are driven to do the things we do. And definitely the evolutionary component is really crucial. And then learning how to very slowly, and as Martha Beck says, these 1 degree turns, start to move towards our own inner integrity.
And also it's kind of, I'm just going to drop this as a question to ponder. Do we need to? Do we need to tap into who we are as an individual?
My knee-jerk answer is yes, but
maybe that runs counter to human nature, though. And do we see? Part of me wonders if that isn't all just a fallacy, anyways, because we all I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know where I was going with that.
I don't understand.
Like, we all got to find our community somewhere. So
yes, but how can you find the right community if you haven't tapped into who you really are? And it is very hard to connect with people.
And what I would suggest is, I wonder if we trick ourselves into thinking we are a certain person so that we can find, because we know there's a community for that person. What I'm saying is, can we actually ever tap into who we truly are at our core? Because our brain is really good at messing with us.
You mean, are we so tied into the conditioning that we have programmed into us that is it actually ever possible? I don't know. It might be one of those things that you can never fully achieve, as you're on Earth with your brain and body and nervous system and all of that. So maybe not, but maybe it's something that you can be getting a little bit closer to. And each time you get a little bit closer, it helps you to find your people, find the things you like.
It's probably one of those things it's more important to do that now, because we live in such a large society that it's actually kind of essential in order to find our community. It's actually essential that we, that's interesting. Okay, I have some thoughts here that I will ponder more. It's essential for us to get to know ourselves better so that we can find that right community for us. Whereas in the past, that kind of self-reflection may not have been as necessary because we were existing in smaller communities anyways.
That's a really good point. Yeah, and maybe part of it is that it's not like a step 1, step 2, where like step 1, find yourself. Step 2, find community. Maybe it's like it's both. Spend the time really getting to know yourself, spend some time in solitude, and then spend time going out and trying things. If you're trying new hobbies that involve other people, that's a good way to find some potential community. And some people you're going to blend well with and others you won't. And then that helps to better inform what matters to you. So, anytime you have an experience where like, I don't really get along with this person, or I don't really like these people, or this thing wasn't for me, it can help then give you more information about yourself. Because the world really mirrors us back to us. So if we feel really strongly about something negatively or positively, it tells us something about ourselves if we have a practice in place to, register that information, whether it's journaling, whether it's meditation, whether it's just going for a walk out in nature and just listening to your own thoughts and thinking about things and breaking down your experience. I think I've discovered that that's the best way to go. Again, it's sort of like avoiding the whole planning thing. So I think it could dive into that territory where you spend so much time on your own, so much time trying to find yourself and figure yourself out, that you aren't actually going out and living your life. Like, hello, that's been me definitely too. It's the idea of like, I have to figure myself out before I can do that. That's when it starts to become an issue. So if you can just have it not be a thing you have to get figured out. It's like, I'm constantly learning about myself. I'm constantly becoming a better friend to myself. That relationship with yourself is just going to deepen over time if you are engaging with yourself. And so there's no end point. It's like, it's just this evolving thing. And you're going to go through periods where you really take big steps forward into knowing who you are, and periods where you feel pretty settled, and then you have an experience and then that gives you more information. So it's this loop, it's this cycle. It's not like a point A to point B. It's just life is constantly going in these cycles, and to just learn how to embrace that and just, show up every day and do whatever makes sense. And
also we all change over time too.
Of course.
So like, are we like similar to that? We're never going to reach that point of arrival. We're probably never really going to figure ourselves out completely anyways, because as soon as we do, we'll probably we'll shift in certain ways. I mean, my mindset and how I operate has shifted significantly since just over the past year.
Yeah. I don't know about you, but I think through the process of doing this podcast, it's really helped me to think more deeply about things, just as I've had to think about things to prep for our recording, but also just as we're having conversations. So again, that ties into, I couldn't get things figured out just on my own. I've gained a lot of perspective from being able to talk with you and talk through ideas and think about things. And that's, a nice part of that too, is just having, it's the input output.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Let's do our intention for the week. So, Robyn, what is your intention for the next couple weeks?
I've been trying to do more walking. And so my intention is to walk 3 times a week.
Nice.
I think that's reasonable. Which sounds sad that I'm not already doing that, but it's the life of an office girl. Job girl.
I don't think that's sad at all. I think it's the norm. Maybe it's sad that it's the norm, that
it's the sad that it's
do
the
office
norm.
Work. It's difficult to do that. Have you thought about getting like a standing desk and getting one of those little under desk treadmills?
No. And I don't think so. Like, I've tried watching, because we have a treadmill here, and I've tried watching something on my iPad while being on the treadmill, and I really don't like looking at a screen while I'm walking. I don't know. It just makes me feel really funky. I've thought about a standing desk before, but I can't concentrate as well while I'm standing, because we have some at work that I've used before, and I find it really challenging to concentrate.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've never used a standing desk, so I'm always curious about how effective they are, because I know some people who like swear by them.
Yeah.
That's interesting that, and I can see that. I can see how if you're used to concentrating while you're sitting down, all of a sudden having to stand, it's sort of like being a little kid when you're like, your class is everybody's standing up and you're all supposed to be doing something, but because you're all like standing up and bouncing around, you find it hard to focus on what you're doing.
I can't settle in, like, and I think for me, when I'm in focus mode, like I lose all sense of what's around me when I'm focused.
Right.
And so I think it prevents me from getting into that deep state, because I'm standing, like I'm swaying foot to foot or whatever. Like, I don't know. It doesn't work for me. Yeah. But I know there's lots of people who really, really like it. And I think it'd be different if I was someone who, like, my body started to feel really uncomfortable if I sat for too long. I think that's different, right? I think in that case,
true, yeah.
It would probably work really well for me. And I know for the people who use them regularly at work, it's, they have issues with their back or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are your intentions?
Well, my intention, I thought just to keep going. Like, just keep doing what I'm doing. I think I'm in a good place right now. Yeah. I'm in a good place, and I just want to keep doing that.
Yeah.
Keep doing it while it's working. right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can send questions and comments to us at streamofartpodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram. We are at streamofartpodcast. You can follow us each individually as well. We have the link to both of our Instagrams below. You can sign up for our Discord. And I think that's it. Yeah. All right. So we will see you all in the next episode. Bye.
Bye.